I'm fully aware that as fantasy owners, we really don't do much. I've always reminded you guys that, even though it's about the papers, of course, most of this is half chance and luck and just the right timing. Matchups go into it as well. And I told you that matchups don't mean anything to me when concerning my main guys. You live and die by your guys. The guys that you drafted early on. Those are the people that you got to fuck with, your day one players. There's a psychological component to fantasy that nobody really talks about, bruh. And Jade lost that psychological game this week. But he didn't lose it for mathematical reasons. He didn't lose it because of points. He lost a psychological game because he lost a psychological game. Dez Bryant has had a tough season. In week 1 of this year, Dez Bryant got 5 catches, 4 points, and then he got injured. And then he didn't play again until week 8. That, along with the fact that Tony Romo's been injured for the better part of this year. Now, in week 8, Dez got a 1, Jay started him. Week 9, Dez got a 16, Jay started him. Week 10, Dez got a 4, Jay started him. Week 11, Dez got a 10, Jay started him. Week 12, Dez got a 2, Jay started him. Week 13, Dez got a 6, Jay started him. Week 14, Dez got a 0, Dez started him. Dez got a 0, Dez started him. Dez got a 0, Jay started him. And now, in week 15, round 2 of the playoffs, for whatever reason, Jay decided to sit Dez Bryant. I am also fully aware of the importance of putting your best foot forward in the playoffs. If Dez got 1 catch with 9 yards for 0 points in week 14 against the Green Bay Packers, then that would make you a bit apprehensive about starting him for round 2 against the best team in the league. But if Jay never sat him before, why now? Why would he decide to play it so safe? I'm also aware of the fact that Dez played early in the week. If I'm not mistaken, the Cowboys played on Saturday. They played the Jets. Now, what goes into that as well is you don't like to put your players in too early because it feels like too much of a commitment. You feel like you want to see everything unravel Sunday afternoon and Sunday evening. But he sat Dez Bryant. For who? For Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett, who recently has been putting up really decent numbers. But to me, it all goes down to your Monday morning quarterback reaction. I think that's how you gotta approach these things. And if you ask yourself that Dez Bryant scored 20 points off 5 catches, would that shock you? And if your answer is no, then you should start that player. And by the way, this is somebody who you picked very early in the draft. Probably one of the top 3 wide receivers to go. After, I don't know, AJ Green or maybe Megatron. I don't know when he was picked. But he was definitely top 3. So those are the questions that you've got to ask yourself when faced with these conflicting decisions. And it shouldn't even be conflicting. You see, this is why I say Jay lost the psychological battle. Because even though Dez scored 11 and Tyler Lockett scored 11, the sudden change implies that you was scared, nigga. You was scared, nigga. That's exactly what it implies. Why would you sit A player who, of course, hasn't been performing, though through no real fault of his own. He's remained healthy since week 8 and on to week 15 just now. Through no fault of his own, his season has been a bit mediocre. So you picked him so high in the draft because he's a player that you believe in. He's a player that's a playmaker. At any given moment, he can just explode and give you a ridiculous amount of points with just one play. And you sit him for Tyler Lockett, a now guy, a guy who's coming up towards the end of the season. It's making a decent run. Not somebody who's exploding. This isn't a Josh Gordon situation. But you lost the game there, Jay. That's when you lost everything. When you told yourself, for whatever reason, because you were, you thought that, my team would pose too much of a threat, whether you thought that, holy shit, this is round 2, I got to really take this seriously. When you chase points, you lose. When you chase points, even if you end up winning, that's fine. But it's not something substantial when you chase points, because you definitely shouldn't chase points every week, as Pedro tends to do in the regular season. And I'll get to Pedro in a second. You can't do that. So you got to stick with the players that you have and toy around with those other positions that are on the bubble. But Dez Bryant shouldn't be on the bubble. But you sat him because you were scared. This is your championship preview. This isn't your round 2 recap. This is your championship preview that I'm about to get into. So, as I predicted, Ed defeated Dro by a final score of, just a second, by a final score of 138 to 86. I didn't even think the game would be, that much of a blowout, but Ed obviously got an extra 18 points or so than Cam Newton would normally give him. Cam got a 41, and he pretty much got double-digit production out of everybody except Michael Crabtree. Of course, a 17 from your defense and a 16 from your kicker will absolutely ensure that you beat anybody. Pedro, on the other hand, made a great decision with with Tyrod Taylor, because Tyler put up a 26 compared to Eli, who got a 23. So not a big difference, but in the playoff weeks, it can help. He got a disappointing 2-point performance from Eddie Lacy. And what really hurt Pedro, where Pedro suffered, ironically enough, placing Eli on the bench, Eli was still able to affect Pedro because the Panthers defense got a -3. Not their first negative of the season. 2 weeks ago, they put up a -3 against the New Orleans Saints in that fucking that high-scoring game that I enjoyed so much. So Ed puts up a 138 and Pedro puts up a mere 86 points. And Ed moves on to the championship round. I want to say that, there's always been there's always been a thing around Pedro that I've always felt, as far as, when he won his championship. And, it's the idea that there were so many there were so many advantages back then. I guess you could make the case and say that for all leagues, period. I mean, even the NFL, maybe that's a bad example. Maybe that the NBA, like back in the day when they were like probably like 8 teams and, the same players dominated constantly. It was a lot easier to dominate. But there were a lot of advantages. I mean, there were so many bad teams. You know, you had Tito. You had Ed's dynamic duo of Cosme and hard hitting, both of which at any given week, or maybe it was Cosme, was just a punching bag for wins. Just, I need a win. I need a win. I need a win. Are you going to show up? No. Are you going to update your team? No, said Cosme. So there were a lot of easy wins that were given. Of course, Tito, you could make a case and say that even if he tried, Tito was basically an easy win as well. And then you start to, you know, take everybody's knowledge now and you sort of depreciate it. You know, you just go backwards in depreciation. And, I mean, you got shitty owners, like in my opinion, Ed's a shitty owner. So you had Ed making Ed decisions like, you know, drafting 2 defenses and fucking 2 kickers and, you know, picking up, you know, Michael Vick when he was suspended or, you know, shit like that. And that all goes into it as well. Hensel's never been the greatest owner himself. Oh, hold up. No, Hensel was not there at the beginning in that first season. He was not there. He took over for Tito, I believe, in the 3rd season. And that's when Hensel won. So there's always going to be that hanging over Dro. And though I wanted Dro to make it, to the championship round, Dro just falls short. But he definitely had a good season because he won his division. So what are you going to do? Got some words for J. Ray as well. Now, I almost feel like Daniel Day-Lewis in Gangs of New York. You remember that movie where Daniel Day-Lewis sort of played, you know, his character of Daniel Plainview that he played in There Will Be Blood? It was kind of the same register when he would yell. He kind of sounded the same. But, you know, Gangs of New York, where he killed Liam Neeson at the beginning, right? The priest. And then Leonardo DiCaprio grew up and he wanted to kill Daniel Day-Lewis because he murdered his dad in cold blood. And then there was that scene that I almost feel like I'm channeling right now. That scene where Daniel Day-Lewis is wearing the American flag over his shoulder, and Leonardo DiCaprio is he's in bed, and it's almost like Daniel Day-Lewis is telling him a bedtime story about the time he killed his dad. But if you remember this scene, you'll notice that Daniel Day-Lewis described Liam Neeson, the priest, with a certain amount of respect. You know? He said, I killed a great man once, you know? And he described a past battle that they had where Liam Neeson could have killed him. Instead, he wanted Daniel Day-Lewis to live in shame. So what did Daniel Day-Lewis do? He cut out his left eye and he sent it to the priest because he felt that he was in battle with a great man that deserved his respect. You see, in this fantasy landscape, as stupid as it is, if I were to have respect for an opponent, it would be J. Ray. It would be J. Ray. So, in killing this man this week, I have my hands are drenched in blood. I just got out of battle, but I have a certain sense of satisfaction, you know, not the satisfaction necessarily that I won, but I have the satisfaction that I took him out, and it was fitting that I took him out. And he feels good about the fact that I took him out, because there's no better way for him to go out than for me to take him out. That's where the satisfaction lies. I knew this great man that he defeated me one time. My face was a bloody pulp, and this is my Daniel Day-Lewis impression. Yes, so I bow to you, sir, and hopefully you'll be back next year, and we'll do this again. So, the championship, okay? It's me versus Ed. Ed, it's you again. We're gonna do this. Now, this is meaningful. Now there's something at stake here. You see all these little past things that you made a big deal of? Doesn't really matter. This is what really matters, my friend. Though I did whip your ass twice. I mean, that does kind of say a little something. But this is your first championship in this league. I mean, I don't remember when you were here. As I said, I mean, we can't look back to 98 and 97 to look back at like playoff brackets. But I think the last year that you were here, which is probably like 98 or 99, 98 and 99, I'm sorry, 2008 or 2009. I think you won one divisional, one playoff game. I think you beat Eric or something like that. Maybe you remember what the fuck it is. But this is your first championship. Now, I have noticed a pattern with Ed that I pretty much predicted. Now, I pretty much predicted that when Ed stuck his chest out earlier in the season, when he jumped out ahead in the standings, and that's when I explained to Ed the concept of a fantasy hare and a fantasy tortoise. Now, ever since he's lost that second game to me, he's dug his head back up inside his shell, and he's disappeared. No more comments from Ed. You see, it's one extreme or the other. You know, it's one extreme or the other. You're either here talking that shit all the time, whether, you know, through your ups or your downs, or you don't fucking say anything at all. Okay? Now, you are projected to get 100 points this week, and I am projected to get 92. Now, I will say that win or lose, I will be back with a championship recap, no matter what. Back talking that shit no matter what, son. It's like Conor McGregor, just talking that shit, just swerving around, because you can't fuck with me, dude. You can't fuck with me, okay? So this is the issue here. The issue is that you can't be a part-timer. You got to go all the way with it, and you can't be attached to the result when you're talking shit, because when you're talking shit, it's just got to be in you to talk it. You just talk it. There's not, oh, I'm going to talk shit when I do this or when I... No, you just fucking talk it because you're confident in your team. And obviously you weren't confident in your team because you fucking disappeared after you lost that second game. But now, you have a Cam Newton who is at pretty much the height of his career, on his way to winning a MVP, without a doubt, up against the Atlanta Falcons. And that's a very great matchup, even though, Atlanta Falcons are the 10th ranked defense against quarterbacks. I mean, they gave up 23 points to Blake Bortles last week. But though it is a divisional game, and whenever it's a divisional game, teams sort of try to play up to the level of their competition. This is going to be at Atlanta. Anything can happen, but I'm still expecting Cam to do his thing. You know, as much as 30 points, wouldn't shock me at all. And you got Todd Gurley against a very tough matchup against the number 1 ranked defense against the run. Not a good look for you. I mean, especially considering the fact that it might be likely that Seattle might run through St. Louis, and maybe Gurley might be, Gurley will just be taken out of the game, but by the end of the second quarter. You know what I'm saying? Most would call that halftime, wouldn't they? Yes. Jeremy Maclin. I really have nothing to say about him. Jeremy Maclin, he can do whatever the fuck he wants for you. He's worthless. Eric Decker against the New England Patriots. Now this is going to be great. You see, this is when I feel that Eric Decker, I've always had this feeling that Eric Decker is going to disappoint you at one point of this season. I've always had this feeling, and maybe it's going to happen now. It's going to happen now. See, the Eric Decker thing with the Eric Decker trade. Look, if I was able to provide some quality for you, then I guess you're welcome. If I was able to provide something for you, because it's not like I gave up Eric Decker and I gave, it was like giving up, a lung. It wasn't. Because, again, I repeat to you, I have Mike Evans, I have DeAndre Hopkins, and I have Sammy Watkins. So Eric Decker, to me, would have just been a guy on the bench. He would have just been a fucking guy on the bench. You know? Like I told you, somebody who's making a strong run towards the end of the season, these last 5 weeks, putting up very similar Eric Decker numbers, is John Brown for the Arizona Cardinals. I have never started John Brown. Technically, I threw in John Brown week 14 when I was on my bye, and I just plastered a bunch of shitty matchups up there just to whatever, see what stuck. So, that doesn't count either. So, over the last 3 weeks, John Brown, week 11, he got a 10. Week 12, he got a 9. Week 13, he got an 11. Week 14, he got a 13. And last week, he got a 9. Very similar to Eric Decker numbers. Very similar. Eric Decker, week 11, he got an 8. Week 12, he got a 12. Week 13, he got a 10. Week 14, he got a 13. And week 15, he got an 11. So it's like I've got Eric Decker still on the bench, only he's blacker and he plays for a better team. You know what I'm saying? So this universe that, one of the many fantasy universes that you live in, where you think that, you rationalize things, with whatever, with your logic, it just doesn't make any sense. I wouldn't have fucking started Eric Decker. So if anything, it was a favor, that was done to you. Obviously, Jimmy Graham didn't work out for me. He had one good week and then he got injured. I would have liked to have had Jimmy Graham still now that Russell Wilson is getting hot. That's the upsetting part. But nonetheless, I have Benjamin Watson, who got a 10 this week. He's not going to be able to compete with Rob Gronkowski. I understand that I'm going to lose that matchup. There is no fucking doubt about it, and that's just the reality of the world. But how are you going to be able to deal with my wide receiver core is what I want to know. How are you going to be able to deal with the possibility that although Aaron Rodgers has not been performing well, can perform as Aaron Rodgers this Sunday against the Arizona Cardinals, which is a tough matchup. But again, I take it back to the Monday morning quarterback mindset. If he scored 35 points, would you be surprised? No, because it's Aaron Rodgers. Okay? Would you be surprised if Cam Newton scored 10 points? Yes, you would be, because Cam's just performing that well. But Aaron Rodgers is always at that level, and he can turn it on at any given moment. Now let's say you got me beat with Cam. That's fine. Do you have me beat with Matt Forte against Todd Gurley? Do you have me beat with Tricandrick West with a good matchup against the Cleveland Browns, with D'Angelo Williams going up against the Baltimore Ravens, the fourth-ranked defense? Against, so even if we come at ties there, I think that the game that is the strongest point of my team. The strongest point of my team is within the wide receivers. And then it's the upside that my quarterback has. Even throughout all his tough weeks, I'm still putting up triple-digit numbers. So when you work that in with the fact that I've got a pretty decent matchup against, the Denver Broncos, my defense, the Bengals, still not sure if I'm pulling the trigger on that one, but it's a possibility. You understand? And I'm not sure if you're going to leave the Green Bay Packers in there against the Cardinals. Again, it'd be very interesting. It's a very important game this season. I believe there's a lot of playoff implications to that. I know that the Cardinals are in already, but there's a lot to that matchup. And, I wonder if you'll leave them in there. Of course, you're not going to play the Jets up against the New England Patriots. That'd just be fucking retarded of you. But I got to say that I like my chances. There's not a lot of good matchups for you. The big game, the big play players are on my side. You've easily got two of fucking absolutely the best at their positions this year. You've got Cam Newton and you've got Rob Gronkowski. Okay? You've got two big play players that can get you, Rob can get you 20 points and Cam can get you 30. You can get 50 points within two players. Todd Gurley has that big play potential, But that's a bit of a tough matchup, and I really doubt. I mean, that doesn't mean he can't have a good game, but I mean, to get like 26 points like he got a couple weeks ago against the Detroit Lions is, I'm doubting that. Then on the other hand, I have Aaron Rodgers, who is also a big player. I'm gonna give you Matt Forte and say that Matt Forte, just the system hasn't been working that way, and normally you would give him that, you would give him that expectation, but I'm not even gonna give you that. But I do have DeAndre Hopkins, and I do have Sammy Watkins. You know what I'm saying? So that's 3 players that are definitely can just put up 20s and can just totally smash you. So I'm pretty confident that I'm going to win this week. I don't know by what margin. I'm not sure by what margin, but I think I got you beat. Of course, as we said, all of this is half chance. There could be injuries and all that stuff, but on paper, even though you're projected to get 100 points and I'm projected to get 92? I still think that I have the better team because I do have the better team this year. If I do indeed win, then this would be my 3rd championship. Now let me run you down the last few seasons of fantasy. The last few seasons of fantasy, in 2010, I defeated Orlando by a score of 92-91. In 2011, Orlando defeated Joe in the famous Brudder Bowl. Brudder, right? A bra, a cow udder, and a bowl. Defeated Joe by a final score of 99-93. In 2012, I defeated Jay by a score of 98-63. Jay just didn't show. In 2013, we had a rematch, and Jay beat me 99-106. And just last year, Andy lost by 2 points to Jay by a score of 80-78. Our fantasy championships have normally been decided by very small margins, as you see, with exception to 2012's matchup between Jay and I. They've been decided by small margins. They haven't really produced big point totals. Though when Eric won his championship, I think we all remember that fucking year where Eric had D'Angelo Williams and he had Jonathan Stewart, and he just destroyed, I think it was Andy. I don't know, man. I think Eric scored like 140 points. It was something like that. And it was just from the beginning, like before the 1 o'clock games ended, it was just like, guess Eric won the championship, which is fucking terrible. And, I also want to add that the good thing about this year is that the champion will pretty much be decided by Sunday. So there's no bullshit. And I'm sure that makes you feel good too, Ed. You don't want to have a whole day where you're like, thinking about possible matchups and what could possibly happen. It'll pretty much be decided, whether I start the Bengals against the Denver Broncos on Monday, unless it's like a 1 point margin or something like that. But, but nonetheless, they've all been decided by small margins. I can't say whether this is going to be a small or a large one. I don't know. I don't predict it being a large one. Maybe at the most there's a separation of maybe about, 10 to 15 points. But again, I believe that it is going to go in my favor. And because I am a fucking fantasy hair, Ed, and by fantasy hair, I mean I talk that shit. Okay? I talk that shit when I'm in the race. Never mind all this, the tortoise wins the vase thing that you have going on, okay? It's not what it's about. That's not what the analogy's about. The analogy is about talking shit to your opponent in the act of being in the competition. You know what I'm saying? And a tortoise, the tortoise doesn't really get all up in the hare's face afterwards or anything. So at no point does the tortoise fucking say anything. The tortoise is just kind of just like, bum. That's what you guys are. You're fantasy tortoises because you don't fucking say shit. You popped up for like a week or two and, you didn't get what you wanted. You pouted like a baby, and then you went away. So I will be back regardless, win or lose. And, I'll give you a recap on the whole season, but mostly just a recap on the championship game, why it was that you lost, things like that. So this was your championship preview, and I look forward to winning that third championship, that third motherfucking ring. I look forward to winning it, though. We don't have trophies. We don't do cash. We don't do any of that. We just simply play for pride. I still look forward to it, and I'll be back next Tuesday. All right. Go fuck yourselves.